Okay, stand by minute, camera.
Hello children, welcome to the session. Today we are going to learn about chapter 2, Respiration, the energy releasing system. For that, let's know the discovery of gases. Lavoisier in the 18th century thought that the gas liberated on heating powdered charcoal in a bell jar kept over water in a trough was like a fixed air. Children, in those days carbon dioxide was considered as fixed air. This was the bell jar and this is the powdered charcoal. The next series shows the combustion of phosphorus in a bell jar. From the experiment, Lavoisier concluded that whatever was combining with the phosphorus in the atmospheric air was not water vapor. Yes children, you can see here the bell jar, the powdered charcoal, this is the water trough. Yes children, these are the hand lens. Lavoisier's next series of experiments deals with the combustion of phosphorus in the bell jar. Children, you can see the phosphorus is in the combustion state, the evaporating dish, the trough in the water, this is the bell jar and the bung to cover the upper surface so that there is no atmospheric pressure of the air to let in. So, according to him, the carbon dioxide is a respirable air. So, by the Priestley's experiment, children, Priestley's experiment we have seen in the nutrition chapter, right? Yes, in one of the bell jar, the candice was in the flame. Next, a rat was introduced in the bell jar. The third bell jar shows that the rat died due to suffocation. The candle was no more lighting. Now, they introduced the mint plant into the bell jar. Now, the rat survived and the candle was lighting. We know children, in the nutrition chapter we have learnt that in the process of photosynthesis from carbon dioxide, water, in the presence of sunlight and the chlorophyll pigment, the glucose is produced, right? Glucose plus water and the oxygen. Yes, that oxygen is utilized by the rat here and the flame is lighting. Now, Priestley's experiment concluded that gaseous exchange was going on in plants and they gave out a gas that supported burning and was essential for the survival of animals. Now children, what was the gas liberated by the plants? Yes, it was oxygen. Now, where do living organisms get energy from children? Yes, it is from the food we take in. Then, what happens to the digested food that is supported to the cells? Yes, energy is produced by the oxidation of micromolecules of the digested food such as glucose, amino acids and fatty acids. Now, oxidation. This is the term which you are hearing for the first time. I'll tell you what is oxidation in the next chapter. By which the process these cells, food materials digest and get oxidized. So, this process is called as respiration. Now, digested food materials are converted into energy within the cells. Now, today we are going to learn about respiratory system in man. Now children, you can see here, you can see the boy is blowing out the gas. In one test tube there was water, in another test tube there was lime water. So, this is the test for carbon dioxide. The lime water turns milky. That means the exhaled air contains what children? Yes, carbon dioxide. This experiment indicates that we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide turns lime water into milky. Now, events or steps in respiration. First is breathing. We take the air in and out of the lungs. Next, gaseous exchange at the lungs level. Next, gas transport by the blood. Next, gaseous exchange at tissue level. And the last step is cellular respiration. Events or steps in respiration. First step is breathing. Air movement in and out of the lungs. That means the air is coming inside the lungs, that is oxygen which is coming inside the lungs, and exchange of gases takes place, that is carbon dioxide is going out of the lungs. Then gaseous exchange at lungs level, exchange of gases between alveoli and the blood. Gas transport by the blood, transport of oxygen from blood capillaries of alveoli to body cells and return of carbon dioxide. Gaseous exchange at tissue level, exchanging of oxygen from the blood into the cells and the carbon dioxide from the cells into the blood. Cellular respiration, using oxygen in the cell process to produce carbon dioxide and water, releasing energy to be used for life process. Children, let's see the pathway of air through the external nostrils. A pair of nostrils are present in the nose. Nostrils, then nasal cavity, then pharynx, then larynx, trachea, bronchus, bronchioles, alveolus and the blood. Now let's get into the one. First is nostrils. Air usually enters the body through the nostrils. Nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is a place where air is filtered. The moist surface of the lining of the nasal cavity and the hair growing in the and the hairs growing from its sides remove some of the tiny particles of dirt in the air. In addition, as the inhaled air passes through the nasal cavity, its temperature is brought close to that of the body and it takes up water vapor, so it becomes more moist than before. Pharynx. Warming and moistening goes in this common passage of the digestive and respiratory system. So, second, nasal cavity. Air is filtered. The moist surface of the lining of the nasal cavity and the hairs growing from its sides remove some of the tiny particles of dirt in the air. In addition, as the inhaled air passes through the nasal cavity, its temperature is brought close to that of the body and it takes up water vapor, so that it becomes more moist than before. Pharynx. Warming and moistening goes on in this common passage of digestive and respiratory system. Now, how do you think this? Yes, the pharynx is the common passage between the trachea and the esophagus. Now, the trachea and esophagus are lying side by side, which is coming from the common passage, that is pharynx. Epiglottis, a flap-like muscular valve, controls the movement of food and air towards their respective passages. Children, the food pipe, that is esophagus, air, windpipe, that is trachea. Now, the pharynx is leading to two passages, the food, that is esophagus, air, that is trachea. Larynx. This stiff box contains our vocal cords. When air passes out of the lungs and over the vocal cords, it causes them to vibrate. This produces sounds on the basis of our speech and song. Trachea. Windpipe channelizing air to lungs. Touch your throat, children. Children, touch your throat. Yes, you can feel ring-like structures here. These are made up of cartilage, soft tissue called as cartilage, connective tissue. So, the windpipe channelizing air to lungs. Touch your throat to feel the tube-like structure. In the demonstration of lungs, we have seen the trachea, right children? The circular forms, yes, ring-like structures. Then bronchus. At its lower end, the trachea or the windpipe divides into two bronchi, one leading to each lung. In this picture, I have clearly showing that the bronchus, the trachea, is dividing into two bronchus, one to each lung. Now, the bronchioles. Children, as I told you, the bronchus is dividing into fine branch-like structures called as bronchioles. Each bronchi is further divided into smaller and smaller branches called as bronchioles. Now, the bunch of grapes resembles the cluster of air sacs, that is alveoli. Consider this one bunch as one alveoli, and that alveoli is surrounded by a blood capillary through which the gaseous exchange takes place. That is, oxygen is getting inside the blood capillary and the carbon dioxide is getting out of the blood capillary through alveoli. Through alveoli towards the bronchioles, bronchioles to bronchus, bronchus to trachea, trachea to larynx, then pharynx, then to the nasal chambers, nasal cavity and the nose. In this way, there is an exchange of gases. Children, in this session, we will be learning all the steps. Now, we will be playing. While in the winters, when we see a glass, we blow out the air like this. Isn't it, children? Yes, we can see a water vapor film on the glass. Why is that? Yes, we are also aware of the fact that the water vapor deposits on the mirror if we breathe out on it. The temperature of the exhaled air is equal to the body temperature. The quantity of water vapor is more than that of the atmosphere. So, when we breathe on the mirror, due to the temperature and the quantity of the water vapor deposits, as the mirror is cooler in the winter season, water vapor deposits on the glass pane.
Hello children, welcome to the session of Respiratory System of Man. For that, I have a live demonstration of lungs of goat. So let's begin the session. So to begin with, we have a trachea. Now you can see ring-like structures made up of cartilage. This is called as trachea. From this, the air from the external atmosphere is getting into the trachea and from trachea to the lungs. Now let's see the structure of trachea. Now trachea divides into two parts, that is bronchus. Bronchus, you can see the bronchus, the trachea is divided into bronchus, two branches of bronchus. To each lung, you can see a hole which is going towards the lungs, right? This is bronchus, is divided into two parts into each lung, left lung and right lung respectively. So I am cutting the section to show the bronchus which is leading to bronchioles to the lungs. You can see the trachea, bronchus is divided into two parts, bronchus. Now the bronchus is divided into bronchioles. You can see the pipe is getting narrower and narrower. Children, I am just showing the trachea how is getting into deeper. Bronchus is divided into bronchioles and the bronchioles are entering into the lung respectively. Let's see. You can see two divided structures, that is bronchioles. So, the bronchus is divided into bronchioles. As I told you, you can see tiny pore-like structures, right? Right children? Tiny pore-like structures called as bronchioles. Now this is the structure of lungs in goat. Children, I made a perforation. You can see the holes here which is going to the lungs, right? See. Deeper and deeper. That means the bronchus is divided into bronchioles. Children, you can clearly see here how the bronchus is divided into bronchioles. See, there is a division which is going to each and every inch of the lungs. You can see the tiny holes here. See. Here. Bronchioles.
Now children, let's study a detailed structure of respiratory system of man. Now children, this is the nose, these are the nostrils. Nose, nostrils. A pair of nostrils are present in us. Now the nose, nostrils leads to the nasal cavity. Through the nasal cavity, we are entering to the pharynx. Now pharynx is the common passage for both trachea and the esophagus. Trachea is the windpipe which is going to the lungs. This is esophagus, food pipe that is going towards the stomach. Now there is a problem here. The food we take and the air we take are going to the same passage, that is pharynx. You can see here children, the nostrils, the nasal passage, this is the pharynx. Now pharynx is the common passage for the air and the food we take. Now that traffic has to be regulated by a flap-like structure called as epiglottis. Yes, epiglottis is the leaf-like structure or flap-like structure which will divert the air towards the trachea and food towards the esophagus, or else it will be a big problem. Now through the epiglottis we are leading to the larynx. Larynx is the sound box. Then to the trachea. Trachea is dividing into two parts children. In the demonstration we have seen, right? The trachea is dividing into two parts. That is, it is called as bronchus. Now each bronchus is going towards one lung, left lung and the right lung. Now from this the bronchus is divided into branches like structures called as bronchioles. Bronchioles. Now the bronchioles will further divide into cluster of air sacs called as alveoli. We will discuss in this session children. Next you can see here nose, nostrils, external, internal, nasal chamber, pharynx, nasopharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, lungs. So the nasal chambers will open into internal nostrils, then nasopharynx, oropharynx, glottis, larynx and trachea. Now children, nostrils. Children, we know in the nostrils we have small hair-like structures, right? Hair-like structures in the nostrils. So whenever you sneeze, don't stop your sneeze, because there might be some tiny particles which are trying to enter your body which may be harmful to you. So when you sneeze, that tiny particles will get rid out of your body. So the nostrils are also playing an important role, isn't it? Yes. Now the larynx, the voice box, that is the voice box of our system. Syrinx is the voice box of our birds. Then children, these are the vocal cords. They will vibrate when we talk. Then epiglottis. Children, I told you the importance of epiglottis, right? Yes, it will direct the food towards the esophagus and air towards the trachea and to the lungs. The leaf-like elastic cartilaginous flap prevents the entry of food into the larynx through the glottis. Now, epiglottis divert the air towards the lungs. The epiglottis diverts food mass away from the opening. Now, why we are not advised not to talk while eating the food, or when you are eating the food, suddenly you get a sort of feeling that somebody is remembering you. You choke, right? We'll do like this, choking. So nobody is remembering you children, because what happens here, as I told you, pharynx is the common passage. So when you are talking while you are eating, some of the food may enter into your trachea and towards the lungs. Now the lungs cannot take the food, so they revert back towards our trachea and towards the mouth. That's the reason we choke. So nobody is remembering you at that time. There's a science behind it. Next. Now epiglottis covers the trachea, so the food that can't enter the trachea. If we talk while eating, as the vocal cords are in the larynx, epiglottis also moves up. Then food particles may enter the trachea. This irritates the respiratory tract and the lungs try to send out the particles with much force. This makes us to choke. So never talk while you eat. Now this is the Adam's apple, particularly in the males where the thyroid gland exists children. Vocal cords in males, they are thicker, longer, produce low pitch of voice. Females, they are short, but they produce high pitch of voice. Now do you remember why do your mother have high pitch of voice? It's because of the vocal cords. Now this is the blood capillary and this is the alveoli. Children, as I told you, clusters of air sacs as in bunch of grapes. Now take one grape, consider that as your alveoli children. Now it is supplied by the blood capillary. You can see here there is an exchange of gases. We will be dealing in the next session. Now these are the lungs. There are a pair of lungs. In mammals and most of the vertebrates, 2 lungs are located near the backbone on the either side of the heart. Now children, see children, raise your left hand, left, right. Now left, right. Okay, children, raise your left hand, left, right, left, right. This is your left part of the body, this is your right part of the body. Now this is the left lung, this is the right lung. Left lung is 2-lobed, right lung is 3-lobed. Now left lung is slightly shorter than the right lung because it has to make place for the heart. Now the right lung is slightly narrower in the posterior side because it has to make place for the liver which is beneath it. Now children, this is head, neck, thorax, abdomen. Head, neck, thorax, abdomen. Now children, head consists of sensory organs, eyes, nose, ears. Nose, nostrils, nasal cavity. This is leading to the pharynx as I told you. Now children, this is dorsal, ventral. Dorsal, ventral. Yes children, you can see here vertebral column, that is spine, running downwards your body. Now take that spine. Now from that spine we have bones. This is bones. Now this is the rib cage. This is the rib cage. Children, see this rib cage. Now consider my fingers as the ribs. Now between these two are intercostal muscles. Between these two are intercostal muscles. Inter means in between the ribs, costal. Costa means ribs. Now these intercostal muscles, ribs, with the help of ribs and intercostal muscles, the contraction, relaxation of the lungs takes place. As I told you, lungs are very soft, spongy in nature. They help in expansion, relaxation. Expansion, relaxation, that is contraction, relaxation. Contraction, relaxation. Now when do they contract? When do they relax? Yes, when we take in the oxygen, they contract. Now you can see through contraction, the ribs are also contracting. This is sternum children. This is sternum. The sternum is also contracting. Now here we have a diaphragm. Diaphragm. Children, this is flat, isn't it? This is flat. Now this is in dome shape. Now during contraction, it expands. Contraction, relaxation. Contraction, relaxation. We will see in the form of charts. Mechanism of respiration in human beings. Children, as I told you, these are the rib bones. In between the rib bones, the red color structure are called as intercostal muscles or chest wall muscles. This is the lung. This is the diaphragm. Now, diaphragm is dome shape in expiration and the diaphragm flattens out in inspiration. Now, as I told you, this is the thorax region. This is the diaphragm and the abdominal region. Now, diaphragm separates the thorax and abdominal region. The lungs themselves can neither draw in or push it out. The chest wall, the lungs themselves can neither draw in air nor push it out. The chest wall muscles and the another flexible flattened muscle called as diaphragm help the lungs in moving air into and out of them. Now here thoracic cavity, abdominal cavity. Now muscular diaphragm. It is in the form of expiration. Next comes from the Latin word inter means between, as I told you children. Costa means ribs. Intercostal muscles are present between the ribs. So there are two types: external intercostal muscles, internal intercostal muscles. The chest wall is made up of ribs, muscles and the skin. The ribs are attached at an angle to the spine. When we inhale, the chest wall moves up and expands. This causes an increase in the volume of chest cavity. The diaphragm may be imagined as the floor if you think the chest cavity as a room.
Let's see the process of inhalation and exhalation. You can see the lungs are expanding. Let's see.
Okay, let's see the process of respiration is of two types, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration. Children, you can see the air is entering the lungs, that is oxygen is entering into the lungs. The ribs and sternum are raised, volume of thorax increased and the diaphragm contracted. So, when the diaphragm contracts during inhalation, it flattens out a bit or the dome moves downward. As a result, the volume of chest cavity is increased. Now, expiration. The air is expelled out of the lungs, that is carbon dioxide is going out of the lungs. Now, the ribs and sternum return to the original position. Now, the volume of thorax decreased, diaphragm relaxed and arched upward. Expiration. When the diaphragm is relaxed and when we breathe out, it is in the form of shape of dome with the convex side of the dome extending into the chest cavity. Then the movement of chest during the breathing. Now children, you can see breathing. That means we are taking in the oxygen, isn't it? The diaphragm is moving downwards, the ribs are expanding, the volume of chest cavity is increasing, right children? Now exhalation. The carbon dioxide is letting out. Now the diaphragm gets into the original shape. The ribs and the chest wall cavity also gets into the original shape. Then what we have learnt? The term respiration refers to the whole chain of process from the inhalation of air to the use of oxygen in the cells. As air passes from the nostrils to the nasal cavity to pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles to alveoli and the blood and back to the same route, that is from the blood, alveoli, bronchioles, bronchus, trachea, larynx, pharynx, nasal cavity, nostrils, the carbon dioxide is breathed out. Now, air is filtered in the nasal cavity and the whole length of trachea. We have seen in the mirror experiment, right children? Yes, the atmospheric air is equivalent to the air which is present in the lungs. That's the reason the water vapor is formed on the glass pane. Gas exchange in the lungs takes place in the tiny air sacs called as alveoli. I told you, cluster of air sacs, cluster, bunch of grapes, cluster of air sacs. The lungs have millions of alveoli, each lies in contact with capillaries. Diaphragm is a muscular tissue present at the floor of the chest cavity. During inspiration, that is inhalation, that means we are taking in oxygen. The chest cavity is increased as the diaphragm contracts and the dome flattens out. Its internal pressure decreases and the air from the outside rushes into the lungs. Now, during expiration, that means the carbon dioxide is getting out, the chest wall is lowered and moves inwards and the diaphragm relaxed and assumes in the dome shape. These changes increase the pressure on the lungs. Their elastic tissue contracts and squeezes out air out of the nose and squeezes the air out through the nose to the external atmosphere. Improve your learning. Distinguish between expiration and inspiration. Second question, what happens if diaphragm is not present in the body? Third, draw a flowchart of pathway of air. For better understanding of the concept, solve the worksheet. Please visit the official website of SCERT. Children, I hope this session has enlightened you the respiratory system of man with the help of goat lungs which I brought from the butcher shop. Thank you.
డిజిటల్ తరగతులు